Hey there, guys. Thank you for tuning in and joining us. Welcome right into the studio. You're tuned into the Hidden Entrepreneur Show. I am your host, Josh Carey. How do you feel about the word failure? How do you view personal failure? Do you get down and beat yourself up for a period of time? Or do you do what's necessary to see it for exactly what it is, learn from it, and pick yourself up? You know all the quotes about failure being an integral part of success, right? And you know all the famous success stories that contain a tremendous amount of failure before reaching that pinnacle of success. Our guest today is absolutely no exception. Get this. At 30 years old, he found himself with 4 successful businesses and a personal net worth of $15 million. But one phone call from his bank that decided to foreclose on his real estate investments had his world crashing around him. He was left with $5 million in debt that he found himself responsible for. What would you do? Well, we're going to find out all of this and find out exactly what he did. Today, he's a very successful entrepreneur, doing this for over 20 years, bringing several businesses to multiple 7 and 8 figures. Since he's been around the block many times, he now helps many start their companies, grow their companies, scale them, find funding, sell them, plan an exit strategy, all of that. He is known as the Fail Coach. I love that, the Fail Coach, and helps entrepreneurs around the world embrace and have a healthy relationship with failure. Can you imagine that, having a healthy relationship with failure with the goal of reaching a higher level of success? If you listening are afraid to fail or resist failing or have a difficult time understanding your own failure, this episode is for you. Let's welcome our guest right to the show. It's Miha Matlievski. What's going on, Miha?
Hey there, Josh. And well, first of all, thank you for inviting me into your show. And wow, what a lovely intro. I'm guessing this will be my new number 1 favorite podcast interview.
Oh, well, absolute pleasure to have you, to see you, and to hear that. That'll be my goal, to have this be your absolute favorite podcast guest interview. So let's dive right in. You were born and raised in Slovenia, right? And
yes.
Today you're living where?
Today I'm living in Serbia. So for the past year and a few months, I'm living in Serbia, which is, well, if your audience is a tad bit older, they might remember a country that used to be called Yugoslavia, which was a communist socialist country that divided in 91 with a bit of a war. Well, for Slovenia, it was a bit. For some other republics, it was quite a heavy war at that time. But yeah, Slovenia and Serbia, they're both part of ex-Yugoslavia.
From your point of view, how is life living in Serbia?
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, I love it here. It's for me, it's so much better than Slovenia. The energy is amazing. People are more friendly. The weather is so much better. I can't remember the last time when we had rain and fog. And in Slovenia, it's foggy every single day. Slovenia has very London, UK-like weather. And Serbia is almost like California compared to Slovenia. And the life here is so amazingly cheap. You can't believe it. Like, I mean, I struggle how to spend $200 a month. It's almost impossible. And you know, like there are like this city where I live, Novi Sad, is about 250,000 people, and you have like probably 20 fresh markets where local farmers go to sell their what they've grown, and everything is naturally organic because they don't have the money, to use all that pesticides and all of that. So basically, whatever you buy is organic and eco-friendly, and oh boy, yeah, amazingly good. And yeah, life is just so cheap here, which is awesome.
Sounds amazing. I love that your business today is called the Fail Coach. I just love that because it's something you wouldn't expect to hear together, the Fail Coach. And hearing your story and your biography here, it makes sense. I want to get your take on something. I hear the phrase fail forward often. Help me understand what exactly that means to fail forward.
Well, I use it a lot. It's one of the most used quotes of mine. So what I usually say is stay humble, be grateful, and fail forward. And the fail forward part, what it means to me is when you develop healthy emotional relationship with failure, because failure is just something not happening the way you want it. So a mishap, if we say it like that. The failure part is your emotional reaction to that thing, because we don't have same strong emotions towards everything that doesn't happen the way we want it. Maybe you're trying to make the perfect risotto and you add too little liquid and it won't taste good, but it's not something you would be hugely emotional about if you're not making that for a nice date of yours. The reaction is not so strong. So you just say, okay, I failed. Next time I'll add more liquid, and that's it. But when we react with huge negative emotions, that's what is failure. And when you develop that healthy relationship, when you see that failure for what it really is, opportunity for you to grow, and basically you are one step closer to success if you approach it the right way, if you learn from it and grow from it. And so when you do that, you are constantly failing forward, because you are not like when you have negative emotions, what happens most of the time is you either spend way too much time rethinking that past event, and depression comes from being too much in the past, or some people develop fear of failure, and then they're too much in the future, thinking too much about everything, connecting that with failures and so on, and that's where anxiety comes from. So failing forward means that you spent in the past just as much as it's needed for you to learn, to grow, and then move on.
It makes so much sense now. Thank you for putting that into perspective. I get it. Because like I've said, failure is absolutely part of our existence, part of our journey, very big part of our success. And I love the risotto example you gave. So what I'm hearing is that in that sort of situation, you might not be as emotionally invested in the outcome per se, but if your business is on the line, or dare I say your ego is on the line, isn't that really what comes into play? And is the goal then having a somewhat, maybe the word is neutral of a reaction, so you're not so aggravated and negatively affected by any failure?
Well, one of the most important things when I work with entrepreneurs is we need to learn how to let go of ego. Another thing is we need to let go of expectations, meaning you focusing on the desired outcome, because that's most of the time completely out of your, so you can't control it, out of your control. Because if your potential client says no, you don't have anything to do with that per se. So what I make them focus on is focus on the process, learn from the process, apply metrics to what they're doing, to the actions, so that we can always see whether we are progressing or not, and then polish the process to the point where it creates results. I mean, honestly, we live in a world where just anything can become successful. I mean, the more stupid the idea is, the likelihood of that being a success is I guess, even bigger than when you're trying to do something just normal. I mean, just go to Fiverr. There is a guy there, like 60, 70 something. I wouldn't even know, but a friend of mine bought a video from him and posted it on my timeline for my birthday. And the guy, he looks like a Father Christmas, with the beard and all white and everything. And he just picks up a banana, puts it to his ear, like almost like a phone, and says, "Happy birthday, Miha. I don't know, like, we wish you happy birthday today." The guy charges, I think, $20 for that 20-second video, and he has multiple thousands of positive reviews, and you can't review somebody if you didn't buy from it. So just multiply that. I mean, those are like multiple 5 figures there from a simple stupid video with a banana. So it's not about, like, too many people focus on, will I be successful, will people want to buy this service or this product. People buy everything when you just apply the right niche and you figure out the pain point that you are serving and the desire that you're bringing, whether that's laughter or something beneficial or something healing or whatever. But it's always what I like to call about some basic business principles. Like, just the way you can't defy gravity, you can't defy basic business principles. And you just need to do the proper business development. You need to go through 5 or 6 steps. When you nail those 5 or 6 steps, you will have a successful business. And then it's just about polishing the process so that you shorten the client journey, that you shorten the delivery journey, and things like that.
I have found that in my past, where I spent decades living embraced by fear and anxiety, my own failure would almost become a self-fulfilling prophecy. I would think, okay, this is what I'm going to do, but I'm quite certain that nobody's going to like it or it's not going to work out. And then I would say, you see, I failed. Do you find that to be the case with many people?
Yes, sometimes, a lot of times they already like predefine and almost in a way lower the expectations so that they won't be hurt. But again, if you focus on the process and not on the outcome, you eliminate that part. I mean, it's not something that you just wake up one day and bam, suddenly, you don't focus anymore on the outcome. I mean, even after practicing this for so long, I still sometimes find myself, wishing for something and not just being focused on the process. But, like, another thing is being mindful, not mindful meditation. I mean, that one is perfect, but being mindful throughout the whole day. Being mindful, I think I can honestly say that I'm mindful about 90% of the day. So meaning I don't go on autopilot, and I recognize when I'm not aligned with how I should approach business or how I should approach different parts of my life. And I can, reset myself quite quickly and refocus back on the process.
How do we overcome something like, because I know that this was my issue in my decades of fear and anxiety, that I would approach something, fail, quote unquote, fail at it, and then feel miserable about how it's going to make me look in front of everybody else, whether it's my intended audience or my loved ones or my friends. And that really became why I beat myself up over the failure. How do you overcome something like that?
Well, I mean, if you would done proper business development, you wouldn't even fail, because you would either figure out that it's not worth pursuing, or you would find the right fit, because you need to know who you are serving. You need to know what you're serving them with, whether that's a podcast, whether that's being a coach, or, even just reselling batteries for remote control. Your audience has a problem. They can't control their TV. You're bringing them the solution. Now they will have batteries. Why do we choose Energizer? Why do we choose Varta? Why do we choose Duracell? Because we trust a certain brand. And, client journey, it's all about know, like, and trust. Have you mapped out that journey? Were you trying to pushing it too fast? Skip the like part and just go from know to trust. It can't be done that way. As you grow, as your brand grows, that automatically shortens the journey. But when you just start out, the journey takes longer. And would you have done the proper business development? And this is what I mostly do with people. I guide them through the business development, and we go step by step through each of the 12 parts in the business development, from niche or target audience, or however you like to call them. And then the problem, solution equals product, business model, unique value proposition. Because when they ask you, why you? Why would I buy from you? Do you have an answer? Why would you be any different? And then understanding marketing. Emotions are always higher on the ladder than logic. But you can't solve a logical problem with emotions, or especially emotional problem, with something logical. I see so many fitness coaches, and they try to, tell you about how many pounds you will lose. I was obese all my life. I just recently, in the last year or so, lost roughly around 120, 30 pounds. Nice. And I still have like 30 to lose. But, the emotions that were within me, the pains, the struggles, and the desires, they have nothing to do with those numbers. It's, how people see you, how you see yourself. It was about, can I bend down and tie my shoes? When I go to the store to buy new jeans and nothing fits me anymore. I love Levi brand and they don't make that size, and things like that. And, those are the emotions. And if you offer emotional solution to my emotional problems, I'm A, more likely to buy, and B, I will give you more money. And that's how you create premium brands. Otherwise, you're just a Walmart fighting for whoever will, or doing a Groupon thing. When, you just always find people who are always searching for next thing where they will save money. But if you want to position yourself as a premium brand, study Steve Jobs and his keynotes when he was still alive. Just look at those and then go to YouTube and find the ones from Samsung. Steve Jobs never ever mentioned megapixels or this many gigabytes or this or that. You have enough storage for all your family pictures. And he was far away from being his own ideal client. But he was always emphasizing on family values, on families being together. Because, in the US and in Canada, that's something that doesn't happen in Europe so much, where we usually live very close to our parents, if not even in the same house. But in US and in Canada, usually you go to college in another state, and then you find somebody there, and it's very often that families live in different states. So connecting that, bridging that gap with the photos and this and that was his keynote. And Samsung was just about the pixels and the gigabytes and this and that. And then I know that I read this a few years ago. I can't remember where, but I know that Apple had 10% of all the smartphone market, just 10%. But they were making 98% of all the profits in the smartphone market. Just 2% went to everybody else. Why? Because Samsung was making 30 different phones and they just had the one. It was 4 and then 4S and then 5 and then 5S. Now they have 3 phones and this and that. But at that time, they just had one phone. And so, you buy everything in bulk. Of course, you get everything cheaper. Your production is cheaper. And that's why you make bigger margins. But what they did really good emotional business development. And their whole content marketing and marketing was based on emotions. Study Steve Jobs. He was a magician at delivering what I call hero stories.
I love all of that. Thank you for sharing that and going down that line. I want to fill in the gaps here and get to know you to see how you achieved and then lost and then re-achieved everything in your life. Take us back to the very beginning, if you will. Miha, as a young boy growing up in Slovenia, paint that picture, please. What was family life like as a young boy?
Well, at that point, it was still Yugoslavia. So one thing, if you live in a socialist, communist country, is nobody has much because that was how the whole system worked, But I was the only child. And we were living together with my grandparents from my mother's side. So there were 4 people in the household living solely for me. All the money that they were making went to Miha.
The only child. So, I love it.
Yeah. So I remember distinctly, like back then, it was almost impossible to get, like Levi's and what's that brand? Those yellow shoes. I don't know. So yeah, like the big brands or Nike or Adidas or things like that. It was almost impossible. You had to go abroad to buy them. And Slovenia was bordering with Italy and Austria. And so, yeah, we would drive there and they would buy me all that stuff. And I was the only one in my elementary school with things like that. I had my first computer when I was 4 or 5 years old. It was, the Spectrum or what was it called? And then the Commodore and so on. I was the first one by I don't know. I think the other children got their first ones when they were like, 14, 15 years old. And I had one with 4 years, I think. So I had this perfect childhood. Perfect. I never had to do anything, like never cleaned the house. I didn't even know what the vacuum cleaner is because my mom, every Saturday, she would say to my dad, take Miha, to zoo or this or that while I'm cleaning the house so that you're not here. I will be done much quicker and so on. I mean, honest to God, I haven't said this in any interview, but I often tell this in conferences. So in the evening, before going to bed, I would take off my clothes and just not even pick them up, but just shoot them out with my leg, with my foot, in front of the door, close the door, and in the morning they were magically not there. Honest to God, that was my life.
I have a 5-year-old daughter, so I get that, and a 3-year-old son. I understand that. Go ahead. So you would just kick off your clothes, throw them on the floor, and miraculously they'd be cleaned up in the morning. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then I went to high school. So in Slovenia, you go to high school with 15. And after 3 years, because it's 5-year high school, after 3 years, I flunked because of Italian language. Because the teacher just didn't like me the way I was, all cocky and, I can do anything that I want, like I have the support of my father and mother and so on. So I was really that obnoxious kid. And she really hated that. I mean, my Italian was really good. It still is. But she just flanked me. And I said, well, why would I go back to school and just repeat this year when I can go and work for my father's company?
What did your parents, I'm sorry, at that time though, when you flunked out, and I get the environment, everything, four adults, parents and grandparents, all serving Miha, but now when you flunked out of high school, did your parents still support that in every way?
Yeah, my father never really cared about the school. So he was always even more rooting for me when I was, like, oh no, I'm not going to, learn from this exam just because that teacher hates me and things like that. So he was very anti-school system. And my mom, like my mom was just, as long as I'm okay and as long as, I'm happy and all of that, like she can handle anything as long as her sweet boy is perfectly fine.
So what did you do after after getting kicked out of high school? You said you went to work with your father in his business.
Yeah. So he had a company. My mom was working in a bank, but my father had a semi-successful small business with a few employees. So nothing too huge, but making good money, quite above the average in Slovenia. So we had let's say the higher middle class standard or something like that. And there I just continued to be son by occupation. I mean, I really enjoyed sales. I really enjoyed networking, connecting with people, and that was about it. So nothing else interested me about the company, running the company, this or that. I just enjoyed doing a few calls, getting a few sales done, and that was it. This was something that I truly was passionate about, if you can imagine.
Did you have any, at that point, did you have any aspirations in terms of what you wanted to do in your future, or were you just day by day, I'm safe, I'm secure, I'm in the family business right now?
My everyday goal was to just, go party in the evening.
Tell me more, Miha. What did that look like? What kind of partying are we really talking about here?
Oh, I mean, so I was always scared of drugs. I never did drugs. I think in all my life, I probably tried smoking marijuana maybe just a few times. And I never tried any other drug other than that. So I don't know. I just was scared, like, oh, what if I like that? And so it was mostly alcohol, a lot of alcohol, and just I love dancing. So it was just any kind, like salsa parties or hip hop, or I don't know, whatever came. Like it was 6 days a week, because the only day there were no parties was on a Sunday evening. And at that time, we would just hang out with friends and get a bit drunk from beer or something like that. So I was probably drinking 7 days a week and then partying 6 days a week.
What a life. So 18, in the family business. What happens next?
Well, everything was going really well for me.
I would say.
Yeah. And then, when I was 23, suddenly my father died. He had pancreatic cancer, and the whole thing happened in about 3 weeks. So one day he felt a bit of pain in his stomach. He asked me to buy, some pills for, that acid reflux. I went to the pharmacy, bought it, took it to home to give it to him. And then next day, my mom calls me and says, can you come pick him up? He's really not feeling well. Just take him to the ER. We went there. They said, okay, we'll keep him overnight. In the morning, when I came back to take him back home, they said, no, we're keeping him in. He has cancer. And then 3 weeks later, so first week, he was still conscious, and then they put him on this Morpheus pills, and then 2 more weeks, and at the end of August, he died. He passed away, and suddenly I had to take over the family business, having no clue other than how to party hard, it was welcome to the adulthood. And I was so unprepared for that.
My goodness, I just can't imagine that very, very quick period. My goodness. So now you're left to process a lot. So how do you step up? How do you step in?
I mean, that was easy. I mean, for me, it was, never a question whether I do that or not. I felt that that's what I need to do. That's the only normal way how you do it, is to step up. The problem was that all my life, all my perfect childhood, I was constantly listening how amazing I am and how smart I am and how better I am than anybody else. And suddenly you find out that you are not. But it didn't came as a realization. That happened many, many years later. At that point, I was actually thinking that I'm so good. So why would I hire a consultant? Why would I, like, the smartest move would be to just find a CEO, keep doing what I was good at, which was sales, hand over the company to the CEO and just do it that way. But no, naturally, of course, if I'm this amazing, brilliant person, I could handle it. And that's how I went about it. And then at that point, the economy in Europe was really going strong. Looking back now, I can't remember a single company going bankrupt at that time. I mean, it was literally you are walking next to the bank and they start throwing money at you. No, it was that way. I mean, any building that was built was pre-sold when you got the permit. You started selling, and within a few days, everything was sold. People were bathing in money. But to me, at that time, I thought, oh my God, I'm so great. Like, I can't do anything wrong. While I was making a lot of stupid mistakes along the way. Like, why would I hire a lawyer to go through the contracts if I can just read them? I mean, I'm amazing, so of course I can understand all that, law language.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and just things like that. And so, at one point, because I had partners in one of the companies, and I wanted to sell that off, so we did a due diligence, and that was at the beginning of 2009. And because everything was so interconnected with me, because I didn't have anybody to tell me about holding companies and this and that, so I was just exposed here and there and everywhere. So when the due diligence was done, they actually had to do due diligence on my personal network as well. That's how I know that my personal network at that time was roughly 15 million US. I mean, it was 12.5 million euros, but that's roughly 15 million US. And then suddenly the crisis came. So in 2008 in US, but Eastern Europe was hit later, and that was roughly September 2009. And that's where things started to, really expose all the stupid things that I've done during all these past few years. And then one day, it was Monday, December 7th, 2009, in the morning, I got a call from the bank. And so they were financing one of my real estate projects. It was roughly around 50 million US project. And I had 100% financing from the bank. And they said, we are moving out of this because there is no way that you can sell even at the price that this will be built. The prices are lower now than what your cost, because I bought the land and everything when the prices were really high, and then add the construction cost and all of that, and I came to more than what people were ready to pay for per square meter or per square feet at that time. So they just closed that. But because I had the 100% financing, I had to sign personally and all my other companies to get that loan. And they just started bankrupting everything to get as much money back as they could. And what that did was, even in my other healthy companies or healthier companies, they would block the accounts. So I was unable to pay the last paycheck. I was unable to pay the taxes, things like that. And I was all my companies went bankrupt, but I was still left with 5 million personal debt that I needed to repay back. Not so much to that bank, because they took a lot of money from everything else, but to what felt at that time half of the country. I was owing like like so many people from my other companies, the employees and so on. And because I was not able to pay the taxes, and because the paychecks were not paid, that in Europe is a no-no when you try to file for a personal bankruptcy. It's immediately they tell you you can't do it. So I was unable to file for that, and yeah, I had to repay the whole thing. And of course, I had no money, and I only repaid that in 2015 when I exited my last startup, which is what six years later, and at the end it all accumulated to almost $7 million with all the interests and the lawsuits and this and that. So in the end I repaid almost $7 million with the last startup.
Wow. So, okay, Miha is on top of the world much of your life because you were told you're the greatest thing, you can do anything, go get him, and you felt that way and you lived that life. You took over the family business, had some businesses of your own, amassed this empire, and that Monday morning in 2009, you had one phone call from the bank that literally pulled the rug out from under you.
Yes.
What in the world is, you hang up that phone? What could possibly be going through your head the minute you hang up the phone? How do you make sense of this and move step one?
You don't. So for the first few weeks, I was living a complete denial. I can handle it. I'll find another bank. I'll figure something out. I will find an investor. Like, I had gazillions ideas, but it was in the middle of the hardest of the crisis. I mean, every morning, all the financial newspapers would be painted black on the cover page. It was almost like, reading when some people die, how is that called?
The obituary.
Yeah, the obituaries. But yeah, for the first few weeks, I had this idea that I'm somehow magically gonna solve this because, that's what I do. I'm that good. And then as the time passed by and the domino effect got all the companies down, and every single day, the situation was less solvable. I mean, it wasn't solvable from day one, but, in my head, I started realizing that. And then at one point, it all flipped into just depression, anxiety, just seeing darkness, not having any dreams, any goals. Just this. I remember I was at home, lying on the couch, like curled up, like that baby position, and my head was just like a nuclear reactor, everything going through. And the biggest problem at that time was that I saw later on was that I was blaming everything, the negative, on everybody else and everything else. It was the crisis, it was my business partners, it was my employees, the bank, the this, the that. So everybody else was to blame. I was, so the good things were my fault and the bad things were not my fault. That's a very, very important part there. And from every single day onto another one. Like I would wake up in the morning to phone calls from people I owed money to. And those were not anything close to nice phone calls. Like, it was not, oh, we're going to sue you, but it was, like, we'll kill you, we'll break your legs, we'll do this, we'll do that. So, from the start of the morning, I would be bam, depression, bam, nuclear reactor in my head. And so that just got worse and worse and worse. And as the days passed, I had no idea what I'm going to do. I saw no solutions. I suddenly, I was like, I distinctly remember a friend of mine called me and invited me to his birthday party 2 or 3 weeks forward from that day. And I wasn't able to reply. Because I honestly, at that point, didn't know if I'm going to be alive 2 weeks from that point. And that's where the whole idea of suicide started creeping in. And it was so welcoming, so inviting, because the idea was everything will be quiet. Everything will be just silence. And I was craving that silence in my head. No phone calls, no nothing. Okay, I didn't have any phone calls during the weekend, but it was like Friday afternoon, a little bit of happiness that maybe an hour later was changed by how can I stretch time? How can I stop time until Monday morning when the phone calls will begin again? So I didn't even enjoy the weekends. I was just figuring out a way to not go to sleep because, you go to sleep, bam, you wake up, 8 hours pass. So I would just wait until I would crash on my computer desk and then just trying to magically prolong that weekend. And so, yeah, one day, one evening, it was around 11 p.m., I was smoking my last cigarette on the balcony, 5th floor, and just a few days before my apartment would get impounded as well. And I started climbing on the other side, looking down. And the only thing at that point was going through my head was, can I do this right? Or will I don't know, end up on a wheelchair? Like that was what was really happening. And then the next thing was my mom came to my mind. And the thing was that she signed a few things for me. So a certain part of that debt would go to her, a bank clerk. And it wasn't so much about her, but I was just so angry at myself. And I said it, first time ever, I said, you failed. Miha, you failed. And the moment I said it, I heard the word you. And it was like really just, I never believed in those epiphanies and moments like that. But like that happened to me. In that single moment, everything became clear. It was not others people's fault. I made those bad decisions. I was too cocky. I wasn't humble. I wasn't grateful for what I have. I was always just striving for more and more and more. That's not a bad thing, but I was never grateful for what I have. I was never enjoying anything. And most of all, it was all my fault. And at that point, everything changed. It was the first time I took life with the pluses and the minuses into my own hands. And I climbed back. I went back. I went in, sat at the table, and just wrote a huge to-do list of everything I need to learn, change. Just a huge to-do list. And the first thing that I did in the morning, I started calling people. I started calling them, and I said to all of them, you know what? You were threatening me with all those things. If me dying will make you happy, then just come here and do it. I honestly don't care anymore. But if you want your money back, then I need time, I need space, I need that peace and quiet. Let's make a deal. I'll call you once a month, give you an update, but leave me alone, because I can't just find a job and repay all that money. It would take me a few hundred years. I need to create something amazing. I need to create a new empire. And I can do it because if I was able to do all that with all the mistakes, if I correct them now, I can do even bigger things. And it took me 3.5 years of going through a whole lot of personal development, business development. But then in 2014, February 14th, Valentine's Day 2014, I created a startup, energy efficiency startup, which means helping big corporations save on how much electricity and gas they use. And I was able to scale that company to multiple 8 figures a month, so to $48 million in monthly revenue in just 10 months. And then in 2015, it was acquired by a Fortune 100 company. I can't say too much because it was like a technological takeover. I had to sign a huge NDA and so on. So I'd rather not go too much into details. But I was able to do an exit and just walk away. My partner at that time, because he was, so his ego meant so much to him that he had to be known that he created this and that. He was locked in for 10 years. He's locked in, and now he went from being a co-owner to now being just a middle manager, employee of a huge ass corporation, and he needs to work there because of his ego. And I did it correctly. I was able to walk away. Of course, with all the money, the first thing was repaying all what I had to repay. I did that successfully. I was left with a bit more, not too much, but at that point, honestly, I saw the opportunity. It would be finally getting everything repaid, and I just said yes to it. And I just knew that I can always make more money. And then I first went for, let's say, a longer vacation. I mean, I didn't go so much somewhere, but I just took time off. But after about 3 months of not doing much, I started craving talking to entrepreneurs. And I just went to a local startup incubator and I said, can I please volunteer? Can I mentor somebody? Can I, do a meetup or something? I need this. And so I discovered that my huge passion is helping fellow entrepreneurs. I mean, I could be doing work for corporations and they would pay me 100 times more, but my passion is entrepreneurs. I've been an entrepreneur for all my adult life. I don't even know how to talk that corporate talk. And the second thing is, while I became obsessed with failure, obsessed in a way of studying it, I discovered that fear of failure is the number one dream killer for entrepreneurs, and that failure is the number one reason why entrepreneurs commit suicide. And that's why failure is such a huge part of what I do. And the name Fail Coach, because that's how I named my company, Fail Coach LLC, actually came when I was having a beer with a friend, and he was thinking of all the different brand names. And he was like, well, you learned everything from failure. Why wouldn't you be a fail coach? And every single branding expert and marketing expert told me not to go that way. They said, people want a success coach. They don't want a fail coach. You know what? Once people understand what I'm doing and what this is all about and how they can actually connect, not with the bling bling, not with the Lambos and Ferraris, but with somebody who failed harder than they did and was able to bounce back. That's what motivates them. That's what inspires them. And so I never looked back on choosing that name And yeah, I've had quite a monologue so far.
I love it. Miha, my man, so much. First, again, thank you for opening up and for discussing all of that emotion and that journey. So much there. I'm scribbling notes. First of all, the minute I heard fail coach, I'm like, wow, I love that. Nailed it. It makes so much great sense, which in and of itself is fantastic marketing and in and of itself will attract the right people who you're meant to attract. I want to go back and just unravel some of the things you said when you were in your deepest, darkest moments there on the couch. And then you had that realization that you said, Miha, you effing failed. And that was the light. That was the embrace. And you said, you know what? It's all my fault. Everything good is my fault. Everything bad is my fault. And I love that so much because there's Tom Bilyeu, who founder of Impact Theory, I follow online. One of his, as he says, one of his most controversial blog posts is when he talks about that he says, it's all my fault. And when people hear that, they take it in so many ways that they resist it. But like you, he's saying the same exact thing. No, embrace the fact that everything good and bad is my fault, my doing, my responsibility. That's when you win. And that was the turning point for you.
Yeah, I mean, so our brain works in mysterious ways. But the thing is, if you try to put something on something else, something outside of you, you immediately say to your brain, you can't do anything right now because somebody else or something else needs to happen before we kick up a notch. But if you just say, if you just own everything that you do, you are in that proactive state of mind and you can always do something. If it's the government, well, you can't do anything until the next elections. If it's your business partner, where you can divorce your business partner, but usually that's a hard thing to do, and then you're just waiting for somebody else to do his part. I always say to people, respect everyone, wait for no one. It's your life, it's your dreams, your goals. You need to do what you need to do to achieve that. Even if somebody volunteer, even if you hire somebody and they don't deliver, it's you who are responsible. You can fire them, you can find somebody new, you can do better pre-qualification, you can do better screening before. It's all you, because if you take that, if you approach it that way, you actually signal to your brain, stay proactive. You are driving your life, and it's not everything else driving you.
Looking back on your life, what advice would you give your younger self?
Oh boy. I mean, I was asked this quite a lot of times, not in the same sense, but it was, if you could go back in time, what would you say to yourself to change something? And my first idea was, of course, I would say to myself, go buy Bitcoin or go buy Apple shares when they were at very low price. But after a bit of thinking, I wouldn't, I would leave it the way it was. Because I honestly love who I am today, what I do today, how my life is. I'm not living the bling bling life. I don't have the Lambos and this and that, but I'm free. I'm happy. I'm satisfied. I'm truly living my passion and just living my dream life. And I wouldn't change that for anything. And that wouldn't happen if everything that happened to me would not happen. Now this doesn't make too much sense, but
no, it makes exact sense. That's such a wonderful outlook and so true. So incredible that everything you've been through, you're here today saying, I love my life. I wouldn't change a thing. With that, do you believe that everything happens for a reason?
Well, I'm not sure, but I think yes. I think I had to learn all those lessons. And I think I mean, in the end, it comes to whether you are humble enough to recognize that there is a lesson waiting for you in when something goes wrong, or you are stubborn enough and you don't learn anything, and then life will test you bit by bit, until one day it will test you to the end, and drive you to the point of either you commit a suicide, or you somehow break free from that, and change and start living the life it was supposed to be.
What mantra do you live by today?
Well, the one I mentioned already: stay humble, be grateful, and fail forward.
Are you spiritual or religious in any ways?
Religious in a common sense, no. I hate all the Christianity and Muslims and all of that, because of all they have done, and all the negativity that I see in a religion. But I do believe in certain energies, and I would say that yes, I am spiritual. I'm just not a fan of religion as an institution. I mean, with everything that we see, with all this happening with young children, and in the name of this, in the name of that, I mean, honestly, I can't believe that. I can't fall for that. I just can't.
What do you believe happens when it's all over, when our time here on Earth comes to an end?
I don't really care. This is something that I've learned from Zen Buddhism. This is the religion that kind of, if I would need to choose one, I would choose that one. And the one thing that I love about it, I mean, I hope I got it right, is that they don't believe in lives before or lives after. They actually say, this is the life you have, live it. So just enjoy this life, live the way that will make you happy, that will fulfill you. Try to do as much good as you can, and because we don't know what will be after, but we have this life, and we better use it well. And one thing that I see so often is that many people, or majority of people, they fear death, but they live like they will live forever. In a way, next Monday, next month, next year, instead of living the life. And when you live life, you don't fear death anymore, because you're living a fulfilled life. And you don't have regrets over the things you can't do, but you live the way that you don't have the regrets over the things that you can do.
I will leave you with this final question. How would you, Miha, like to be remembered?
That one's easy. I want to be the one who broke the taboo called failure. And a few years ago, everybody was laughing at me, and then soon, when they saw that I was in a few conferences and this and then, suddenly a bit more people started believing that that's actually possible. And I mean, it's not something that will happen very quickly, but that's actually the mission of everything that I do. I want to help people establish healthy relationship with failure, and by doing that, we will be able to talk and speak about failures. And if you look at sex 30-40 years ago, it was a huge taboo. And now today you go to a McDonald's, and like every second person is talking something sex related. And that got me thinking, like, how did we break that taboo? and it was by talking about it. And that's what I try to do. I try to go on podcasts, I try to go on stages, I try to use my story as a tool for other people to open up, and they start talking about it. That's, I mentioned to you my Failures Anonymous project and the interviews I'm doing with people who are freely talking about not just the numbers and this and that, but the emotions, the self-talk, the important stuff behind it. And every single day I try to do as much as I can so that we talk more and more about failure, and not just naming the failures. Oh, I dropped out, I did this, I wasn't accepted there, but the emotions behind it, the negative self-talk. One day I want to be the one who broke the taboo called failure.
Such a fascinating mission, especially when you hear it like that, to break the taboo around failure, because there absolutely is, which it almost seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, but whether it's big or small in my personal life or business, I mean, really, let me see how I can break this down. On some level, we're all failing constantly, right? In little things, in insignificant things, in middle things, in big things, in family, in business. But isn't it about how we personally identify or define it versus how we think others are going to, or if a business partner or my wife looks from the outside looking in and says, oh, well, you failed at that. I mean, somebody doesn't have the right to define my failure, right? I'm onto something there.
Yeah, but that's just, what most people do, because it's so much easier to be, looking what others people do and then, defining that as, oh, you failed, and pointing in them. Because the hardest battle that we all have to do is the battle with ourselves. But, it's so much easier to help others. It's so much easier to focus on others. It's so much easier to put down others. Because the hardest thing is to look at yourself in the mirror and start working there. Because that's where that's and fighting your own inner demons, your own insecurities, your own how you view things happening to you and so on. But it's also the most rewarding of all the battles.
Yeah, let me give you an example of what I'm thinking in terms of this very podcast, for example. So I do this per episode. This is an episode. So on the outside, I have this podcast launched, and somebody might say, how successful is it? Trying to determine from the outside, is it a success or is it a failure? But really, I have 100% ability to define that, right? So I can say, well, it's an absolute success because I began it, or I did it, or I'm doing it. Oh yeah, well, how many downloads, or who were your guests, or how much money, or any of those other parameters? Yeah, I could ask myself those same questions and say, yeah, you know what? I don't have a famous quote unquote name on it, or I don't have 1 million downloads, or I'm not making $1 million from it, all those things. And then I could easily label it a failure.
But that would be the wrong approach.
Correct.
So the first thing is, of course, you should talk with others. That's how we learn. But at the end, it's your decision how you will guide it, how you will define it. That's completely up to you. So if you are content with what you have achieved, that's perfectly fine. We are all different. We have different dreams and different goals. That's one thing. And then the other one is, of course, you have new goals. Of course, you have more milestones to go through. And it's all about creating a solid plan and then following it through. And talking with others, yes, but not in a way where if they can't add value, like to help you maybe with the steps or even brainstorming what you should do next, or help you get some quote unquote famous guests onto your podcast and so on. I mean, if they're not adding value, but they're just judging and telling you, I mean, and honestly, I don't care. Like, when somebody does something like that to me, like, that's your opinion. Great. You have that opinion. I know what, like, it's my life. I need to drive my life. Respect everyone. Wait for no one.
Absolutely brilliant. Miha Matlievski, my goodness, thank you kindly for showing up, for doing you, and for opening up. What a conversation. What a beautiful person, Miha. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Josh. Thank you. It's really, like I said, it's my story. I view it as a tool that opens other people up. And almost every time I do anything like this, interviews or things like that, people connect with me, tell me their stories. And that's what it's all about. It's not about my story. It's not about my numbers. It's my tool to give voices to others.
Absolutely beautiful. The website, which we'll link to in and around this episode, is fail.coach. Really cool domain name, by the way, since they opened up that .coach extension. Fail.coach. For all things Miha. Really wonderful to have you join us, sir. I really appreciate you and your journey. And I appreciate everybody who's tuned in to this. I hope you got something out of it. If you got one little tiny thing, don't just hold on to it. Do something with it. Take one small step in the forward direction. Fail fast, fail forward, right? That's what we've learned today. We're going to learn something new real soon. And until we do, go get them.